Welcome, everyone. Today is Wednesday, the 4th of August, and this is the Cluster API project meeting. Cluster API follows the Kubernetes SIG's community guidelines. So that generally means raise your hand if you'd like to get in the discussion, and please treat each other as you would expect to be treated yourself. So explicitly, please be kind. So let's roll on here. If you're attending, please add yourself in the attending section of the agenda. And looks like we have no PSAs today. So we'll just take a quick look at the release blocking issues, although I'm guessing there's probably not a lot of updates since last week. I don't think this has really had any change. Yeah, it looks like nothing new here. Let's look at the open proposals. All right, would anyone like to talk about cluster class and the managed topologies? I don't know if we have an update since last week, but just take a quick peruse here. And I guess if Vince is not around, this might be kind of quiet. All right, I'm not seeing any hands, so we'll just move on. Anyone to talk about the spot instances? I don't know if there's been any update here. We'll just check quickly. So this is Alex. I don't know if Alex is here or not. Don't see him. Let's just look and see if there was any updates since last time here. It's looking like probably not. Okay, yeah, no update here. Scale from 0, I can pretty much talk about. I'm rewriting that right now, so it's not quite ready for review yet. So going on to the 0.5.0, the load balancer provider. I guess I saw Joel in here. I don't know if Nadir's around. Does anyone want to make a comment about this?
Yeah, I can. We're going to try and sync up tomorrow on this one.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Joel. The IPAM integration. I don't know if Jacob's around. All right, I'm not seeing any hands, so we'll just assume this is kind of still going. And the managed external etcd provider, I guess this needs reviews. Is there any other comment here? It looks like many things have been addressed. So I guess we just need some more reviews here. So if people are interested, please take a look. Alrighty, so rolling along out of the open proposals here, we'll get to the discussions. This is easy. I have the first one. So I've been researching a bug that has, it's known in the cluster autoscaler, and this bug is basically around the notion that when GPU nodes are being autoscaled, there is a delay between the time when the node becomes ready in Kubernetes and when the GPU driver becomes allocatable. So the node does not contain the GPU resource for some amount of time, and then it gets added. And what this causes the autoscaler to do is it causes it to make too many GPU nodes. In investigating this, I found that there is a piece of the autoscaler that's supposed to avoid this, and it requires the cloud provider to be adding a label to the nodes that will contain GPUs. And when I looked through our code, I saw that, oh, that's the wrong link. I saw that we have a label in there that I don't see appearing anywhere in our code. And I wanted to bring it to the group here to see if people had any ideas about this. I'm just going to try to bring it up real quickly here. Nadir, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I've not seen this before. Is the idea that the infrastructure providers, say Kappa, would set that label on a node if it's a GPU type instance?
Right, exactly. So in our code, this is in the autoscaler code, we specified this label, and this label needs to appear on a node. And that way the autoscaler will know that a GPU is going to become active on that. Now I looked through some of our cloud providers and I don't see this anywhere in there. So I kind of wanted to talk to the group to see, does anyone remember discussing this? Because this has been in the code since we put it in the autoscaler. And as I understand it, in order to kind of solve this from our end, each provider would need to be adding this label during their machine reconciliation loops, basically, because as a new machine is created, only the provider would know if the GPU is going to be there or not. Cecile, go ahead.
Just a clarification, when you say provider, are you talking about the cluster API infrastructure provider or the cloud provider implementation?
Yeah, so I am talking about the cluster API. Okay, let me back up because I realize there's two levels of providers here. So there's the cluster autoscaler, which uses the cluster API provider, which is a generic interface to cluster API. And then we have the cluster API actuators. That's kind of what I'm talking about, is each one of those cloud specific actuators would need to be adding this label to nodes when it comes up. Does that help clarify it? Okay, so yeah, so I'm not sure how others feel about this, and I don't know. Looking through the code, I couldn't see how much updating we were doing to node objects, but this would change things a little bit. So yeah, Jack, go ahead.
Hey, Mike, thanks for looking into this. So I have one question about the label that you shared in that code. Is that configurable from a cluster API, from a cluster autoscaler perspective? So when you load your cluster autoscaler, you should be able to say, this is the GPU label to look for that will indicate a node is running GPU cores.
Yeah, that's a great question. It is not. As you can see, this is just a const here, and we don't have any logic to override that. So but that's a great suggestion. Maybe that would make it easier for the individual providers to kind of interface with this.
Yeah, I think so. I think that, I mean, I think it's, we can look into other cluster autoscaler providers, but I believe that it is set up that way where it's essentially runtime configurable. There's a default label. There's a lot of different patterns for this, comparable patterns like, you know, you can set a annotation on a node or a label on a node that says, don't consider me for cluster autoscaler, scale up or scale down. Those are also configurable when you instantiate the cluster autoscaler runtime. So I think we want that label to be user configurable with a sane default. And then hopefully other folks can speak to this. We can just actually declare a generic set of labels per machine resource in the cluster API spec or in the provider spec. And then maybe each provider can use that interface. I don't know if that interface exists right now. Sorry, I don't know that. But each provider could then use that interface to provide a default GPU label based on their own provider specific logic that says, oh, okay, well, this VM flavor is being used. We know that that's a GPU label. So we're going to then, you know, inject that label by default. But all that stuff should hopefully be user configurable with same defaults. I think that would get us where we want to go.
Yeah, and it's going to require some agreement from us. Oh, Cecile, you had your hand up. Did you want to say something else?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna to answer your original question, like for CabZ, like this is the first time I see this label, and we do have GPU node support, and we're not labeling the nodes. So I don't think this is currently being done, at least not in all providers. But yeah, I'm just curious what, like where the ownership of that would lie, because the labeling of the node, to me, that's something that would be done by CAPI or by the user through the template. If we did support, like we had an open issue for supporting taking the labels on machines and applying them to nodes, I think, like transferring those. So that would be a good way to do it, like in the template, labeling the machines that have the GPU support. But otherwise, if we had to like do this in every provider implementation, like, and having to like go and check and then go label the node, I don't know how that would work. Yeah.
that, that your suggestion about, putting this into the template so that it actually gets reflected into the nodes, that's a really great idea. That might be like a good solution to this. But yeah, the other side of it, what you're talking about is, yeah, like this is why I came to the group, because like this would need to be agreed upon across cluster API, and then every provider would need to like do whatever it is to label the node when they know that an instance with a GPU is going to be coming online. So I guess like, would it help if I created like an enhancement to describe how this process would work so that we could maybe collaborate on the labels we want to use and make it a little more just like public facing, I guess? Jack, you had your hand up?
Sorry, I'm just moving my finger because I'm on my iPad. Yeah, I mean, I think to answer your question, I would vote yes. That sounds great. I'd be happy to contribute to that. I think we also want to probably include annotations. I think this is, at this point, we're talking about something that's more general than just cluster autoscaler. There's a lot of Kubernetes ecosystem componentry that does various things based on node label status or node annotation status. So like CureD uses annotations to, do certain things. And so being able to plumb that into a cluster API spec when you create the cluster is extremely useful, especially as you're, creating machines. You're like classifying machines, like you've got your GPU machine pool here, you've got maybe some other domain specific secure compute or something like that. And so you're going to plug in a bunch of tooling on top that needs to look for those specific nodes that are running in that particular context. But it could be an annotation as well, depending on the tooling. So I think we want to probably consider that. I know that there are differences between labels and annotations, but just in the ecosystem that I've seen, different tools sort of prefer annotations and different tools prefer labels. So I think we could probably solve this for both from the cluster API side.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Like I'll look into making an issue and enhancement about this. And I see like some of the comments here, like Nadir and Scott talking about, like Scott says, same for vSphere, there's no official GPU support, but it works. So like, this is where I would say like, maybe if you're doing some GPU stuff, you might want to test this because yeah, GPU support will work with the autoscaler, like because we're doing it through machine sets and machine deployments, but you might want to try loading up workloads that have GPUs as part of their selection requirement and see what the autoscaler does, because you might find that the autoscaler will create too many nodes. So just something to be aware of. And then Lubomir, I totally agree with what you're saying. Like we should standardize on some common labels. That's why I think maybe an enhancement would help us here. And I guess, to go back to Jack, what you're saying, you're talking about this from a wider kind of aspect. In this specific case, we just need to satisfy one very specific API requirement, that the autoscaler is working off of. And I think it'll unblock like a big issue for us, or a big issue in the autoscaler side. But then we'll have to figure out how to organize ourselves to kind of do this. So, yeah, I appreciate all the feedback here. Jack, did you have something else? I saw your hand up. Okay, cool. Does anyone else want to make a comment on this or have anything to say? Alrighty, let's move on to the next one. Matt, you have a topic about the machine pool machines proposal. Why don't you take it away?
Yeah, thanks. Can everybody hear me okay?
Coming through loud and clear.
Brand new office. I'm not sure how well the Wi-Fi works, but apparently good enough. Yeah, so this is pretty self-evident, but David Justice did an implementation of machine pool machines for Azure. We think it's great, and we would like to do the same thing in general in CAPI. And so this is a proposal about doing that. There's still a lot of to-dos in the document. If people click through and check it out, there's some stuff to be fleshed out, but I think most of the substance is there, so it's definitely worth taking a look and commenting. Obviously, we'd really like any feedback in the order of this will never work with our provider, or you forgot to think of this. But any feedback would be great. It's obviously not happening for CAPI 04, maybe for V05, depending on how feedback goes. Yeah, and the motivations are right there under the summary, but essentially changing the abstraction from machine pool to encompass machine pool machines gives us a way to address machine pool machines and allows things like cluster autoscaler to be more specific when dealing with machine pools, and allows us to implement deployment strategies and cordon and drain code. Behaviors like that ideally would just be shared in the common CAPI implementation, whereas right now achieving the same behavior is essentially provider specific code that people would have to write. And so, you know, we go a little more in the motivation. We have our goals, our non-goals. We want to produce a couple more sequence diagrams, but there's some decent user stories in here. And then there's a lot of to-dos at the end. So there's still work to do, but hopefully it's worth people looking at. Are there any questions about this CAPE in progress? The only other, the other question I had is, this is just a Google Doc that David started, and I'm a little unclear on the process. If there's a better home for this, we can copy it elsewhere in Google Docs or something. Otherwise, hopefully people can jump in here and edit and provide comments. But if there's a better place to put it, let us know.
Cecile, go ahead.
Yes, the process is usually to open a Google Doc and you can like share permissions with the whole mailing group so that everyone in SIG cluster lifecycle has access to comment and view. And also if you can like add it to the office hours Google Doc, like at the top, there's like an open proposal section. So
Right.
You can add it in there so we can have it tracked in there. And then once we've gone through like review, there's no like major blocking comments and feel good about moving forward, then we usually move it into a PR.
Right. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, this looks great, Matt, and you know, I'm happy to see the autoscaler getting some high attention in the user stories here. That's awesome. So yeah, I guess encourage everyone to take a look at that, leave your thoughts, and yeah, I guess we'll just kind of watch it as it goes through the process here.
Great. And feel free to contact me or David Justice directly if you have something that's outside the scope of just commenting in line.
Cool, thanks. Cecile, looks like you've got the next topic. Why don't you take it away?
Yeah, I actually added two, but I think the second one's not refreshing, but I don't know if it's from my side or yours. My internet's been a little unreliable, so. And yeah, so
I see it
it's
in my
not really a
doc, so.
discussion, but just a heads up that, okay, so there might just be a refresh issue. But yeah, I didn't want to start the discussion now. I just wanted to give a heads up that we were going to talk about this for those who were following, but since a lot of VMware is out and actually Fabrizio's here. Never mind, Vince isn't here. Just thought it'd be better if we hold until next week to discuss. But basically, wanted to see what our plan is for releasing maybe another alpha and then planning for beta and what our target date / features is. So if you have thoughts about that, like especially the last thread discussion at the bottom, please think about it, bring your thoughts to next week's meeting. And yeah, we'll have a discussion then.
All right, cool. So yeah, everyone take a look at that, and we'll have some more discussion next week. All right, let's see if this has updated for me.
Yeah, and the second one, it's also not really a discussion topic, more of a PSA, but it's the link that Zach also posted in the chat. There's an article that came out yesterday from the New Stack, which gives a really good overview of Cluster API. And what I like about it is that it's not just like the what, like we've seen a lot of API, but this also explains really well why, like why would you want Cluster API and how it came to naturally evolve in the context and history of Kubernetes, with like an interview of our own maintainer Vince, and Brendan Burns from Microsoft, and also someone from Red Hat, Adol Luke, I think. So yeah, take a look. It's a good read if you're interested.
Yeah, very cool. I hadn't even heard about that. I'm gonna have to get on Adol's case and tell him, why didn't he tell us? You know. Okay, so I guess that kind of brings us to the end of our topics. I guess, does anyone have an ad hoc topic, or do we have any new community members who'd like to introduce themselves? All right, I am not seeing any hands going up, and I'm not seeing anything happening in chat. So, Fabriano, or Fabrizio, sorry. I was just talking to someone named Fabiano. Go ahead.
No, don't worry. Just a quick PSA. So, work for cluster class is going on, and we kind of decided to, given that the code for cluster class is growing, we kind of decided to move the work, to do a little bit of a refactor and move everything related to cluster class to a topology folder. So it will be isolated from all the other controllers, and we can have, let me say, more meaningful file name, stuff like that. And in doing so, we also noticed that in our unit test, we have a lot of, let me say, repeated code for building test objects, so fake object builder, stuff like that. And so as a background task, we are going also to tackle these, create a sort of library for building test object, a set of common matchers that can be reused, stuff like that. It will be a kind of side project that we start in parallel to cluster class, and cluster class will be the first user, and then possibly we will refactor existing tests, stuff like that. But the idea is that, given that we are looking with fresh eyes to this problem with Kilian and Stefan, which are new members, and provide new also, let me say, new point of view, let's leverage on this and try to make some good refactor also in our unit test. So just a PSA, if you will see some PR moving things around related to cluster classes about this.
Awesome. Thank you, Fabrizio. Yeah, that's a great PSA, and it sounds like an exciting project to me. So I hope, I hope to see some of that stuff soon. That's very cool.
Yeah, for the test, now we got kind of idea, and we are going to open some issue, trying to define, let me say, what we want to achieve, and some general direction before starting to act. And so everything will be as usual in the open, and if someone would help, this will be great. Initially, we will keep this in an internal package, so we can iterate fast without worrying about breaking guarantees. But as soon as we reach something stable, we can reconsider and make it viable for the provider as well.
Yeah, I can certainly understand that desire to not get into the friction of upstream CI too soon, right? Okay, thanks, Fabrizio. Do we have any other kind of ad hoc topics people want to mention quickly? Alrighty, well, we'll get about 30 minutes of our day back here. Thank you all for coming out, and we'll see you next time.
Hey, everybody.